Hello. Thank you so much for joining today. My name, as always, is Malin Johnson, and today I would like to discuss narcissism. We all know narcissism through its characteristics of selfishness and manipulation, but what is it defined as? How do we know if somebody is a narcissist or not? Is it a disorder, or is it a personality trait? Let's take a look at how it impacts relationships too. So grab a pen and paper, snack, something to drink, and feel free to ask any questions you have along the way. Our moderator will be happy to answer them. So as I mentioned, my name is Malin Johnson. I'm here with the Counseling Center of East Algoma. We are a free and confidential counseling agency available to anybody in the area. So if you or someone you know needs help for anything, tell them to pick up the phone, give us a call. We have 2 locations, one here in beautiful Elliott Lake at 9 Oakland Boulevard, and one in Blind River, accessible across the street from the cop shop at 1 Industrial Park Road. Both avenues you can access through our phone number, however, at 705-848-2585. So today, with narcissism, we'll take a look at the following topics: understanding narcissism, how narcissism affects relationships, learning the dangers of narcissistic behavior, and who to contact if you need help. So let's get into what narcissism is. Well, it's defined simply as a person who has extensive interest in or admiration for one's self. And while we know too much of one thing is dangerous, having a little bit of narcissism isn't necessarily detrimental. So forms of healthy narcissism, they could be displayed through confidence, good self-esteem, perhaps even as a part of one's recovery. Unlike unhealthy narcissism, which is displayed with a sense of entitlement, lacks empathy, or a need for attention or constant admiration. Understanding what is healthy and unhealthy normally isn't as easily noticed or spotted as one would notice happiness or anger. For instance, narcissistic personality disorder, for example, is manifested within an individual's personality, and their need for attention can be displayed as blaming, as gaslighting, or perhaps crying. Up next, I have a video to demonstrate these lines. Take special note of the specific characteristics, and also any questions you have along the way, feel free to put them in the comments section, and our moderator will be able to answer them.
Way before the first selfie, the ancient Greeks and Romans had a myth about someone a little too obsessed with his own image. In one telling, Narcissus was a handsome guy wandering the world in search of someone to love. After rejecting a nymph named Echo, he caught a glimpse of his own reflection in a river and fell in love with it. Unable to tear himself away, Narcissus drowned. A flower marked the spot where he died, and we call that flower the Narcissus. The myth captures the basic idea of narcissism, elevated and sometimes detrimental self-involvement. But it's not just a personality type that shows up in advice columns. It's actually a set of traits classified and studied by psychologists. The psychological definition of narcissism is an inflated, grandiose self-image. To varying degrees, narcissists think they're better looking, smarter, and more important than other people, and that they deserve special treatment. Psychologists recognize 2 forms of narcissism as a personality trait: grandiose and vulnerable narcissism. There's also narcissistic personality disorder, a more extreme form, which we'll return to shortly. Grandiose narcissism is the most familiar kind, characterized by extroversion, dominance, and attention-seeking. Grandiose narcissists pursue attention and power, sometimes as politicians, celebrities, or cultural leaders. Of course, not everyone who pursues these positions of power is narcissistic. Many do it for very positive reasons, like reaching their full potential or helping make people's lives better. But narcissistic individuals seek power for the status and attention that goes with it. Meanwhile, vulnerable narcissists can be quiet and reserved. They have a strong sense of entitlement, but are easily threatened or slighted. In either case, the dark side of narcissism shows up over the long term. Narcissists tend to act selfishly, so narcissistic leaders may make risky or unethical decisions, and narcissistic partners may be dishonest or unfaithful. When their rosy view of themselves is challenged, they can become resentful and aggressive. It's like a disease where the sufferers feel pretty good, but the people around them suffer. Taken to the extreme, this behavior is classified as a psychological disorder called narcissistic personality disorder. It affects 1 to 2% of the population, more commonly men. It is also a diagnosis reserved for adults. Young people, especially children, can be very self-centered, but this might just be a normal part of development. The 5th edition of the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual describes several traits associated with narcissistic personality disorder. They include a grandiose view of oneself, problems with empathy, a sense of entitlement, and a need for admiration or attention. What makes these traits a true personality disorder is that they take over people's lives and cause significant problems. Imagine that instead of caring for your spouse or children, you use them as a source of attention or admiration. Or imagine that instead of seeking constructive feedback about your performance, you instead told everyone who tried to help you that they were wrong. So what causes narcissism? Twin studies show a strong genetic component, although we don't know which genes are involved. But environment matters too. Parents who put their child on a pedestal can foster grandiose narcissism, and cold, controlling parents can contribute to vulnerable narcissism. Narcissism also seems to be higher in cultures that value individuality and self-promotion. In the United States, for example, narcissism as a personality trait has been rising since the 1970s, when the communal focus of the 60s gave way to the self-esteem movement and a rise in materialism. More recently, social media has multiplied the possibilities for self-promotion. Though it's worth noting that there's no clear evidence that social media causes narcissism. Rather, it provides narcissists a means to seek social status and attention. So can narcissists improve on those negative traits? Yes. Anything that promotes honest reflection on their own behavior and caring for others, like psychotherapy or practicing compassion towards others, can be helpful. The difficulty is, it can be challenging for people with narcissistic personality disorder to keep working at self-betterment. For a narcissist, self-reflection is hard from an unflattering angle.
So it's important to understand the major distinction between the narcissist, whether it be vulnerable or grandiose, and somebody who suffers from a narcissistic personality disorder, is that the narcissist isn't necessarily mentally ill, does not have a personality disorder, and is most interested in gaining power, money, and prestige. Too many narcissists, in fact, succeed in their lives. There is no need to worry about the self-esteem of the narcissist, and they have an overabundance of ego. Narcissistic personality disorder, however, is a mental illness, of which people have an inflated sense of their own importance and a deep need for admiration. Those with narcissistic personality disorder believe that they are superior to others and have little regard for other people's feelings. However, behind the mask of ultra-confidence lies a fragile self-esteem, usually quite vulnerable to the slightest bit of criticism. So narcissism can make for lasting and damaging relationships. Remember, the key objective of the narcissist is inflating their own image. And for some, the only way they know of doing that is through damaging functions within relationships. So early on, the beginnings of a relationship, a narcissist can seem charming as all get out. At first, the practice of love bombing or saying how capable and smart their potential partner is, even when they're still trying to get to know each other. It could be a way that they see a relationship work, that they deserve to be with other people who are special, and the special people are the only ones who can appreciate them fully. So a narcissist can be a real conversation hog. And not just talking about the successes, but again, the narcissist will constantly push for their own well-being. This could be through constant bragging, but more detrimentally, they would steer the conversation away from their partner. They wouldn't engage with their life passions, trials, tribulations. They would make situations revolve around themselves. They also may feed off of their partner's compliments, constantly fishing for praises. Remember, the only way for them to feel good about themselves is by having that recognition. And if they don't get it, they won't be far from putting others down. So what happens when they're not getting that gratification that they need? Well, it can turn. And that's usually a month, maybe weeks, when these qualities will show. Everything you do, from what you wear to eat to who you hang out with and what you watch on TV, it could be a problem for the narcissist. They'll constantly put you down, calling you names, hit you with hurtful one-liners, and make jokes that aren't very funny at all. It could also be masked in manipulation. The narcissist might say, well, you were able to do such and such because I didn't sleep well, or some excuse to make it seem like you had an unfair advantage on them. They want you to know that you're not better than them, because ultimately for the narcissist, nobody is. Gaslighting. Well, gaslighting is a common manipulation tool used by the narcissist. They may spew lies, spin the truth, and ultimately try to distort your reality for control. They'll change stories and tell you that you are wrong at recalling past events. With this, on your own part, comes anxiety, less confidence. You feel like things are always your fault if it goes wrong. And you feel like you are walking on eggshells, and that you have no say when it comes to defining the goals and parts in your relationship. Leaving the narcissist can be quite difficult too. At first, they may be pleading or begging for you to stay with them, pleading essentially that they will change their behaviors, but take note of the language. I will change. I'm so sorry. I won't do such and such again. Instead of investigating in your feelings, the narcissist may not even know why you are breaking up with them at all, or even care. Narcissists, in fact, they may go as far as using or threatening to use physical violence as a form of manipulation. If they were successful previously in manipulating individuals, they may repeat that cycle over and over again. What are the signs of abuse in a relationship with a narcissist? Well, let's take a look at the following video and see the signs of abuse.
Partner. So what does an abusive relationship look like? Let's start out with the more obvious signs. Does your partner hit or force intercourse with you? Physical and sexual abuse should never be tolerated. So why do victims never walk away immediately? Because abusive partners tend to be very manipulative. They might not always be violent like most movies and social media portray it. I'm sorry, babe, I didn't mean to. They'll often say as they embrace their partner with a loving hug, or, I was just having a bad day, I won't do it again. This is how it all starts. And because the victim usually sees the best in their partner, they'll believe them. Abusive partners may even make it up to their victims by showering them with gifts the next day. They know when to use just enough kindness to win them back every time. When this happens, they'll keep pushing the boundary of what is allowed to see what they can get away with. And that's how this cycle repeats. An abusive relationship can also be mental or emotional. Common tactics the abuser will use are love bombing and gaslighting. When the victim feels like they've had enough and tell their partner they're going to leave, the abuser will use love bombing and might say something like, If you leave me, I won't know what to do with myself. This is why, on average, victims usually attempt to leave 7 times before actually leaving for good. When the victim is being gaslighted, the abuser will make them feel as though they are going crazy or not remembering things right. Consequently, the victim will start to blame themselves for the actions of their partner. This is how the abuser stays in control, pulling at the strings of the victim, whether they guilt-trip them or threaten to hurt themselves if they leave. More often than not, the victim will be too afraid to leave the relationship, worrying it's not a safe decision. In extreme cases, it can even be life-threatening, where women are 70 times more likely to be killed after they leave the relationship. And sometimes it can be the social pressures that cause victims to suffer longer than they wish. Some abusers will seem like the perfect spouse who is financially and professionally successful. Friends and family members of the victim might get easily sucked into the abuser's dangerously charming ways and believe they are Mr. or Mrs. Perfect, dismissing the victim's horror stories. The list goes on, but the relationship doesn't have to. If you believe you're being abused by your partner or know someone who might be, please report this to the police. Change will seem scary at first, but staying in a relationship until it worsens will only put you in greater danger. Remember, you are worthy of being loved in a healthy, supportive way.
So what are the dangers of narcissism, specifically within the relationships? Well, we know that narcissistic individuals will go to what seems like insane lengths to manipulate situations, manipulate people, manipulate relationships, all in the pursuit of their own higher being. The abuse that a narcissistic individual can inflict upon their victim is a stepping stone to homicide. Now, not all abuse leads to murder. But what we do know is that those who were killed by their partner, approximately 70 to 80% involved a history of prior abuse of the female by the male. If you're considering leaving an abusive relationship, whether or not you think that your partner is a narcissist, reach out to us and talk about constructing an exit safe. While it is common belief that the narcissist that threatens to commit suicide is doing it for manipulation, those with narcissism personality disorder do statistically commit suicide 50 times the higher rate of the national average. While no one wants to feel responsible for the self-inflicted death of another person, it's vitally important to understand that ultimately it's a choice that the other person makes. So just remember, you shouldn't feel bad to be proud of your accomplishments or to be happy about your achievements. But putting people down in order to make yourself feel good is a form of abuse. Narcissism is a real condition. And open lines of communication, honesty, and empowerment to your friends and family, that can potentially save a life. Maplegate House for Women is a safe place for women and their children to go in the event a woman's life feels to be endangered within their environment. There's also Larry's Place, a men's shelter, available at the same phone number. But remember, if you are in immediate danger, pick up the phone, dial 911. If you have any questions about your relationship, please contact the Counseling Center. We have professional counselors offering to help you confidentially and safely. Give us a call to set up an appointment today. Thank you so much for joining today. As always, my name is Malin Johnson. I hope that you found today's presentation on narcissism somewhat insightful. We ask you to fill out the short survey we have in the comment section. It helps us continue these valuable education sessions and other education sessions. Speaking of, feel free to visit our other videos that are on our Facebook page about healthy relationships, managing emotions, and a variety of other topics. As always, my name is Malin Johnson. Thank you so much for joining today, and we will see you next time.